Hi guys, I'm Shmi, and today I'm surrounded by some rather spectacular scenery. We're in the Italian Alps, in the Dolomites, where we're driving some awesome mountain passes in the new Ferrari GTC4Lusso. Now this is of course a particularly interesting car for me to be driving because it is the new model of my Ferrari FF. So I'm very, very pleased to be down here, and a big thanks of course to Ferrari for the opportunity to let me join the press launch and get a first drive opportunity behind the wheel of the new car. We're going to take a good look around it, then I'll take it for a drive. I'll show you all the way through the interior because there's been a lot that's been updated. We had a look at the car at the Geneva Motor Show, but it's completely different when you're out and about and driving it in the real world. So what should we talk about? The GTC4Lusso. It is the update, and the name, well, let's start with the name. So there's not that much consistency between Ferrari's naming structure. You've got LaFerrari, 488 GTB, F12 TDF, and now GTC4Lusso. So GTC, of course, has some heritage back to the 330, the Lusso, the 250, so it's a very significant name in Ferrari's history, and the 4 representing 4 seats, 4-wheel drive, and now also 4-wheel steer. That's one of the very clever trick technology features we're going to talk about during this piece. So looks wise, a number of updates from the FF. From the front, you've got a slightly reworked lower bumper where there's only sort of this one much larger inlet. Before you had 2 sort of inlets on the sides as well, and now they've gone for the single view. While we're towards the front, we've also got this new venting area there. I'm going to quickly pop open the bonnet, done with that, so we can show you the engine, which is an updated version of the 6.3 litre V12, now with 690 CV, the Italian for horsepower, just shy of 700 newton meters of torque. Performance figures, 0 to 62 miles an hour, 100 kilometers an hour is down from 3.7 to 3.4. And 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, 124 miles per hour, is down from 11 seconds in the FF to now 10.5 seconds in GTC4Lusso. 4RM, 4RMS is their new clever technology trickery, computer magic that's working together to make this car, well, better from the driving dynamics point of view. But let's just come around the back, talk a little more about the visuals too. We've now got the dual rear lights on either side, reminiscent of the 308, 355, 512, a very sort of traditional Ferrari look. We've got a button to open the boot now. Simple things, but we didn't have a button on the previous model. Back here, much the same. Rear legroom is extended slightly by 16 millimeters, and you also now have the spec list of a car on this plaque on the boot, which is quite nice. So you can just look down that and see what options we've got. The panoramic roof is a particularly lovely one, and that leads me on also to this rear hatch spoiler, which increases downforce by 6% on the car. We'll have a quick glance at the interior now before we jump out for a ride. We've got a lovely dark blue interior against the white of this car. And the main thing is this, the new 10.25 inch touchscreen. Before we get to that, let us start this up. V12 comes into life. The screens fire up. So this screen has all sorts of options and things. I'm going to run through it in a lot more detail later on and show you more of the sort of convenience features, but they've worked a lot more on storage areas, all that kind of thing. And over here, this is a particularly nice one. Helps if I actually press the button to turn on the passenger display. So I want to show you that too because it's awesome. Familiar, awesome sound from the V12. So I'm going to jump out for a moment more just now. I'm going to take the car for a little drive down roads rather like this and answer perhaps the one big question, which is, Should I upgrade my FF to a GTC4Lusso? Let's start by discussing the name. So it's obviously quite a long one, and I'm trying to work out whether we shorten it to GTC, GTC4, Lusso, or if we say the full GTC4Lusso. So you'll have to excuse me if I chop and change and move backwards and forwards, because it's a little bit more complicated than it was when we used to just say FF. It is, of course, the spiritual successor. Maybe FF2 would have been more appropriate. No, let's not go down that route. So I'm driving down a mountain pass, starting off in the sort of most gentle of modes possible: comfort, softest suspension, automatic steering. There are lots of cyclists about that I need to be aware of course, and just careful. So excuse me if my concentration goes towards driving correctly at any point. So just driving along like this, it is very, very gentle. I feel the car is positioned a little bit more towards the GT end of the spectrum than the FF was, because it feels even smoother, even more comfortable, even softer. The steering is a little bit more relaxed. You know, we've been doing some driving in the car already, and I'll go on to more about the steering feel a little bit further on when we're coming back up, driving a little bit more aggressively. Just being able to open up the car and enjoy it. I mean, for example, the sort of GT characteristics of the car are sort of summarised to me by the change in the valve control. The new valve system in the car is set so that basically in first, second, third gear you don't have the valve open. It's a much, much quieter ride, much less going on until you really push down and open it up. Equally, the throttle response, you need to press further on the pedal to get more action out of the car. Same with braking, it doesn't have that same instant sort of Ferrari style snap sort of response, which is sort of comes from the sports cars, of course. Equally, the steering. When you're driving like this and you're being gentle with it and just sort of, you know, loosely turning the wheel, it's very, very soft, very easy. In Ferrari style, when you dial it up and you're pressing on more, the steering has that instant sort of snap, sort of in the right direction, direct sort of feel, although there's something a little bit funny about it I haven't quite got my head around yet. Maybe I will do with a little bit more driving. From a comfort point of view, the air conditioning is 50% quieter than before. It works very well. It cools the entire cabin in less time, of course. You've got a sort of central panel that opens up for additional cooling to bring that through. So everything's positioned to me in a way that feels like it's even more of an everyday car than the FF was. The FF broke into this market of the hatchback, the style, and this has taken it a notch further. Quite a significant notch further, as we're going to experience when we drive up as well. But just the car in front pulling in, so we've got a little bit more room to pull forward and enjoy it. So driving in comfort is super relaxed. In my car, I don't regularly do comfort. Maybe I'll pop it into comfort on the motorway to soften the suspension when I'm not changing gears or playing with the car, but when I want to drive and enjoy it, always sport, but normally sport with bumpy road mode pressed for obviously softening the suspension back down again, but sport gives you slightly more aggressive changes. The changes in here are very, very smooth, considered, but slightly more aggressive, and obviously it'll be in a slightly lower gear at most points. Now, the road has got very, very twisty, and you'd expect a big car like this to be hard to position, but it really isn't. It's very, very easy to work out where it is. It sort of feels small around you, and the faster you go, the more it wraps around you, similarly to how the FF did. So I'm going to try and find a point to turn around, and then head back up the hill. Then the beauty of mountain passes, where you can accelerate up, keep your speed in check, and obviously your brakes are very strong. I'm going to press the button here to put it into manual, so of course I want to be changing gear myself. We do come straight to a stop with the traffic on one of the tight corners. Typical. Hopefully we can get up the pass and clear in no time at all. But yeah, I like driving in manual. Of course you have the familiar paddles fixed to the column, very long paddles, so very easy to reach wherever you are when you're steering. And you also have a steering wheel with new controls on it. Yum yum. the sound is still very, very good. It's that familiar naturally aspirated V12 from Ferrari that we all know and love. And it's an interesting one because Ferrari is sort of talking about the future always containing V8s and V12s, not going the way of smaller engines. Maybe physically smaller engines, but not V6s, for example. The cyclist egging me on there. But I think they're going to introduce maybe some KERS systems rather than the turbocharging of the other manufacturers. So that's all down the line. But for now, you know, we're driving a near on 700 horsepower. Just an amazing, amazing sounding engine. It's one of the crazy things, and it's one of the things I love the most about the FF. It's a usable car, yet it sounds so good when you're driving. Now, am I going to get an opportunity to squeeze on through? Not at the moment. So the rear wheel steer, let's talk about that. Now, it goes up to 2 degrees. The wheels, when you're going at slow speeds, will steer in the opposite direction of the front wheels. So that gives you additional sort of steering control, tighter radius, more grip like the car is on rails. When you're at higher speeds, they will turn to face in the same direction of the wheels, of the front wheels. That gives you additional stability. So there's a control system. The 4RMS is controlling all of that. It controls all sorts of things. The side slip control, the four-wheel drive system. The four-wheel drive system itself, which operates very similarly to the FF in the sense that you can get it's effectively a rear-wheel drive car with a dual gearbox system, and it will only use the front wheels in 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th gear, not in 5th, 6th and 7th, and only when the torque is required. So if there's slip at the rear, it then sends torque to the front, up to 90% to a wheel, which is all very, very tricky and clever, and they have this new control system that's managing all of that. It looks like I can get through here, so this is going to be good. To enjoy it a little bit more. Enjoy that noise of the car as we can drive away here, and I can start to feel the grip. You know, you turn in and the car just darts around the corner. It has so much stability and control in corners for a car of this size and weight. And you'll go into a hairpin here, bring down the speed of course, but you turn the wheel and it just pulls around like it's on rails. It's a phenomenal feeling, and then away you go. The four-wheel drive obviously putting the power down very, very well as you pull out of the corner. Up to the red line, 8,250 RPM, which is a very nice place to be, the same as the FF as it happens. Oh, bus steadily does it. Off we go again. So I think my conclusions so far are that the car is very impressive to drive, no doubt, but it's perhaps orientated a little bit too much for me towards GT and less the sort of sports car with practicality that the FF was. It is definitely the natural successor, and I'll show you more around the interior and talk about why that is. But the ride has become very everyday, as in you can use the car, you can use it in all circumstances. It still does that. Actually, maybe I don't really know what I'm talking about, and the thing is just awesome. It feels very quiet, everything's well made. Off we go. And it's very capable to drive rather quickly with a lot of ease. So, cyclists everywhere. I have literally picked the world's busiest pass to be driving on today. But yeah, it wraps around you, it drives like a sports car. I'm looking forward to a little bit more time, but it's that sports car that you can convert into a full GT when you want it. Just sit back and cruise. After a little bit more time driving the car, I really feel like I'm starting to get to know it a little bit better actually, and sort of discovering and being able to explore the rear wheel steer and what it's capable of and getting the sports car feel out of it. So what this car is it's an FF that when you're driving long distance is even more of a GT because it's quieter, it's more gentle, it's more relaxed, there's less responsiveness from it. But when you're driving it like this, it fully comes to life. Fully comes to life in exactly the way I would quite like it to. So for me, this is a bit of a no-brainer successor. It's the natural, complete replacement to the FF. It has every box ticked in the sort of practical sense of four-seater with luggage in a car that can drive in snow. You can go on a ski holiday in this thing. You could go to the shops, as I did with mine. You could take it to IKEA and go and buy some furniture if you so desire. It's such a lovely package for an exciting drive, combined with everything I certainly want out of a car of this class. Now we'll pull over somewhere and I will show you around the interior and all of the lovely stuff in here that just makes it that extra little bit even more special.
The roads are amazing and the scenery up here is absolutely beautiful, but it's time to take a look around the car in a little bit more detail. And the very first thing I want to show you is the new look Ferrari key. So Ferrari have finally gone to the keyless system. A lot of people actually comment in videos about my FF about still having the key that you have to put in the ignition and turn it before you press the start-stop button. Well, now you just jump in the car, start it up, and away you go. While we're on the outside, I should show you the buttons. We've got a light button, boot button, unlock and lock. So the boot is now powered by default. The FF, that was an option on later FFs, and you actually have to be quite close to the car to actually open it. But the boot in here is exactly the same. You have the ability to fold the seats. You can fold down just the central section or put it down with the right side, or put down just the left, or put down the whole thing. You've got your trickle charger sockets and things tucked away to the sides, and some bits and bobs down under the boot floor. So that's all as we know. There's a button on there to close it. Powered trunks, I know that's not breakthrough, but it's nice to have it as a standard on the Ferrari. So we'll jump inside, because I promised I would show you a lot more of the goings on in here. And the first thing I'm going to do is just fire it back up so that I have air conditioning blowing at me, including through that diffused panel there in the center. So the key has a nice little pouch to pop it in there, where it will stay while you're driving, just behind the window buttons. And in here, well, panoramic roof, very, very lovely. Back seats, similar sort of formats to the FF, and I can tell you they work really well. They're sort of like bucket seat style, hold the rear passengers in quite nicely, and because they're positioned a little bit higher, the rear view passengers actually have a nice view out over the sort of shoulders of the driver. In the center here, you've got two USB ports for charging your devices, and a storage bucket just under here as well with cup holders. A little bit awkward to show from this angle, behind those vents. Now, around here, firstly, you've got dual displays. The right display is controlled by a jog dial on the back. Now, this is one of the things I'm not entirely sure about, because before you had an analog speedometer the whole screen, and on the back here you had up and down for next and last track. You now have no ability to cycle through your music tracks on the steering wheel, so that's a slight change that I'm less keen on. You can sort of go through the menus and click and get to your songs and things, so you can do it still. Now, if you take the left screen back to the speedometer mode, it changes the right screen to the speedometer. So this is all slightly confusing, and you have a digital speedo there and a digital speedo there, so no excuses for not knowing what speed you're going. Your mode is up at the top left, controlled through this new look Manatino, starting in ice mode, then up to wet, then to comfort, then to sport, and if you press and hold it, ESC turns off. We'll make sure that's back on just so there are no issues if I decide to drive off. Indicators. You've got new indicators that you can actually press from behind. Before they were just the sort of small button on the front, so you have more freedom and ability of control through the indicators. Equally on the headlights here, where you press it in to go main beam, pull it back, or press it for a flash from behind. And wipers on the right, you've got the control for auto wipers there too, the different wiper modes. They've also moved the phone controls here to the centre of the steering wheel as well. And by the way, this piece is actually quite a nice metal piece. It looks a bit plasticky, but it's actually metal and quite nice. A bit mixed feeling about that. But in general terms, the steering wheel's shrunk down. The horn buttons, which were here very confusing, are now in the middle where you expect a horn to be. So from a driver's point of view, you've got this kind of zone around you. You know, this is sort of broken out. The controls here, which obviously move for a right-hand drive car to that side, it's all done to make you feel like you're in a driver zone, and then you also have the passenger zone with the passenger display. You've got some nice touches like the door handles here. I really like that for the door handle, just above the boot, fuel cap and seat controls, which are obviously tucked in down here. Many different ways you can move the lumbar and those kind of things. Mirrors, lights, electronic handbrake, cruise control setting, and this which controls the left display. So if I can do this so you can see both, you cycle it through the different displays as shown. You can go back towards the home screen where you have status, trip, VDA and all your settings. So you've got all of that that's now controlled through that jog dial. So you've got that jog dial for that screen, and that screen is controlled by the back of the steering wheel. And those buttons on the back of the steering wheel, the volumes on this side, are a bit fiddly. They're hard to find. You have to actually feel around to get them. So that's less efficient than it was on the FF. But that's the driver zone. Let's take a look now at this. This is a ginormous 10.25 inch touchscreen interface, and it's a very clever interface that's super nicely integrated. It doesn't look like it's just an iPad stuck on the front, but it's also controlled through the touchscreen and through these sort of dedicated buttons just beneath, which move to that side in a right-hand drive car. Back to home, you've got radio, media, navi, phone, comfort. We'll go into comfort because that's the new exciting one. Into climate, you've got all your climate control settings there. Diffuse is that, which will shut down. And then you feel all the air coming out the vents. That's what keeps it super quiet, having that to feed air into the cabin. All the controls that are down here are replicated there, so you can do all of that, which is quite nice. Fun little thing. And then if we go back and then to the seats, you've got similar controls for playing with your seat heating of the different seats and things, but we don't need that today. Even though it's a little bit cloudy, it's rather warm out there. Everything is beautifully presented. It works very, very nicely. Just going into the media, everything does in here exactly what you are sort of, expecting that it would do. And it seems to be very efficient and very effective. While we're talking navigation systems, let me show you the split screen view where you can bring up any of those options over to the right hand side and have that split view, and you can swap them around. Load up navigation and media that way, so that's quite a nice little feature as well. So I like this. The FF system was always very backwards, and this has now brought this car super to the front, the forefront. That is as good as it gets. We've also got, just by way of sort of storage areas, we've got this center console, excuse the spare phone in there, cup holders, storage space, all that good stuff. Another armrest here with a big storage bucket, 2 more USB ports. So there are actually 4 USB ports in here before you get to the cigarette sockets. JBL hi-fi system and some good door pockets as well. Glove box is opened with that, which opens up the glove box for us. Now, let me lean over and show you this, the passenger display. Oh, did I just press it twice? So we've got, it would help if I could turn it on. There we go. We've got media controls. It's a touch screen, 8-inch touch screen. You can do everything pretty much as per the main system, but from the passenger side, you've got some sort of GPS style information. You've got the rev counter, which is quite cool, the speedometer. If I just give it a blip on the throttle, you have that going on, which is quite nice. Back to the menu, and you've got VDA, which shows you how the driving stuff is set up, and you can just cycle left and right through the different modes as well. That is awesome. It's expensive, but it is awesome. Right above this very nice GTC4Lusso logo too. Air vents, I really like these air vents. They've got a lot of movement, so you can point them exactly where you want. I'm less keen on this quite plasticky system for opening and closing them, but we will survive. That's not the worst thing in the world. So that's an interesting point as I try and blip it there. The throttle pedal, the response is really, really strange. It's not geared up towards revving, that's for sure. It's holding me back. I'm basically pressing all the way down here, but just not holding it. And it sort of stops itself. I guess that's, again, the characteristic of the car, going for this slightly less, shut it down, slightly less sports car, slightly more GT feel. We'll open the door. Doors are huge, very long, and the handle is quite far forward, which makes it quite difficult sometimes to pull in, but if the handle was any further back, it would be even harder. So I guess you can't really win on that one. Just see if you can see the various buttons we've got above us. Rear view mirrors, not rear view mirrors, what's it called? Sun visors. But generally, in here everything's very nice. You've got the same sort of grab handles you had before. If I show you, when you close the door, you have this system here for pulling the seatbelt towards you. Which won't work because everything's off. If I do that, there we go. Pulls the seatbelt out, then you grab that and do what you need to do. Sort of latched in, and if I turn it off, back it goes. So that works more or less as you would expect it to do so. So I'll hop back out. I should talk about the tyres quickly. We've got 295s at the rear, same as the FF, 245s at the front, but this is the new... Oh, there goes one of our friends. Doesn't that sound good? Should that sound? Let's just listen to this for a moment. TDF blue is of course gorgeous as well. Behind the cyclist there. Oh, and another. The sound of GTC4Lusso is everywhere, wonderful. So I was just talking about the tyres. We've got the new P0, so the new P0 tyre. I went to the launch of that at Estoril in Portugal, which was pretty cool. And this tyre is positioned a little bit more towards the sports end. So P0 tyres for sports cars are a little bit between the old P0 and the old Corsa. So they're a little bit more sporty and aggressive than before. And that's what this car's fitted with. These wheels, an iteration of the previous, my car's wheels, for example, very nice design. I like that a lot, the 5 twin spoke with the navy blue ceramic brake calipers, of course, in there. So this has been my fairly interesting first drive in the Lusso. A car that's obviously very relevant to me, being the sort of new version 5 years later after the FF. I've had my FF now for about 9 months. I've driven about 8,000 miles in it, so it's getting a good innings. But the thing, obviously, the consideration for me is that this car starts at £240,000. By the time you put options on it, you're going to be at 300, probably just over 300. So it's basically 2 FFs. My FF is probably worth about £150,000. So I would find it hard to jump up right now with the other cars I've bought, but in the future, I would very, 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 very much like a GTC4Lusso. There's no question. It's the complete natural progression. It's the car I would like to be driving next. So as soon as I find myself able, I'll upgrade the FF, I think, to a GTC4Lusso unless something else comes along that takes my fancy. But right now, it would be this. So I'm really enjoying driving this car. We've got a good little bit more driving ahead of us. Looking forward to this one. But thank you very much for watching this video with this car. And a big thanks, of course, to Ferrari for letting me come out and give you this first drive and my sort of driving impressions and feedback and what I think behind the wheel. That's it for now, though. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch up with you again very soon. Cheers. And here we go. This is the moment. This is the LaFerrari. Let's pull the paddle, pop it.